G'day Internet, Max right here, and we have one of our favorite guests on the channel, Juan Lighthearted. Juan, thanks so much for joining us.
Max, great to see you, my friend.
Fun times. We got Bitcoin at the time of recording pushing up to $108,000. We got a new all-time high a couple of weeks ago at $110,000. Thank you for the piece of alpha you gave us last month. You predicted that the Chinese yuan was going to fall considerably. They're going to start printing. They've sort of hinted at that, but the Chinese yuan has been falling. Take your victory lap as you deserve it. Tell me a little bit more. What do we got to look forward to for the next month? What are you excited about?
So, Max, I actually wrote an issue, on my weekly newsletter. I wrote an issue saying, pointing out that the correlation between the rising yuan and Bitcoin has been pretty much one-to-one since Liberation Day. So, pretty much since around April 9, we have seen both the yuan go up and the price of Bitcoin. And lo and behold, the Chinese started printing again. So I don't know if this is the market expecting some deal between the US and China, or the deal is already on the table. I really don't know. I think it's front running by the market, thinking, Trump is going to negotiate. The Chinese are going to negotiate. And eventually everything's going to, they're going to hold hands and sing kumbaya. I don't know if that's what's going to happen in the end. But right now, what I care about, I think this is the final stage in this 4-year cycle due to about sometime in Q4. I think right now, just rising liquidity and hopeful expectations for good times ahead, at least for the remainder of this year. I think they're lifting the market. And what has me excited is we're just talking off air, offline. Or is that off air, offline? Doesn't matter. The fact that, well, I'm going to talk cycles now. Around Bitcoin's all-time high right now was made on May 22nd. May 22nd is a breakout into an all-time high. The actual breakout to the all-time high was, I believe, on the 18th. I think it was on Sunday. It was on Sunday, May 18th. These types of breakouts, these type of cycle breakouts. There's an 80-day cycle. Don't want to get into the weeds. Please go into my YouTube channel. You can watch the videos there if you want the explanation. But basically, these types of breakouts have about a 90% chance of following through on the price of Bitcoin. Translated, when Bitcoin breaks these cycle tops, the last one was made on Trump inauguration on January 20th. Bitcoin tends to follow through significantly, at least 50%, about 90% of the time. So it's a great trade. It's actually one of my main trading strategies to buy those breakouts. Well, here's the thing. Last time we had such a breakout, it was on January 20. It was Trump's inauguration, and it failed. If you look at the price of Bitcoin on that time period, we have a high in mid-December and a retest of that high. That is the new attempted breakout on January 20th, and it failed. Significant correction ending on April 7th. Very unusual price action is what I'm trying to say. Very, very unusual to have this type of double top on Bitcoin. In fact, on that cycle specifically, I think this is the first time in history that that's happened. The last time that failed was April of 2022. Bear market, Fed raising rates, liquidity crashing, obvious. It was obvious that the price was not going to follow through to the upside, because if it had back then it would not have been a bear market. And it was pretty obvious that everything was crashing in April 22. What I'm trying to say is this breakup we had now in May, I mean, I'll be shocked if it doesn't follow through to the upside. And since it's at least 50K, well, it should take us to, 50%. It should take us to about 150K, 160K on Bitcoin. That's what the numbers, the math, and the cycles say. On top of that, we have liquidity. Liquidity is slowing down. And by that, I mean the rise of liquidity is slowing down right now, which points to a potential high sometime in September, October, right now. But it's just slowing down. I believe eventually liquidity will begin to drop in Q3, which means we're going to have a high, significant high in Q4. But between now and then, between now and September, let's just say, upside. Liquidity points to upside. And then the correlation between liquidity and Bitcoin is about 90%, which means you're not going to have Bitcoin price falling, liquidity going up. We have seen that in the past, but it's very unusual. And last time we saw it is when the Fed announced that they would raise rates. So it was liquidity dependent. The market started to price in the falling of liquidity in 22 as early as 21. We're not seeing any of that now. So it's bullish. Just the metrics that I track are bullish, just across the board. The cycles, liquidity, the falling dollar, which actually boosts liquidity. I see kind of clouds forming on the horizon, very distant stuff. I am worried that the Fed is not cutting rates. I don't think they will. And I am also worried that this liquidity boost we're having it cannot last unless the Fed comes to the table and begins to slash rates. And I just don't see that happening. But people ask me, offline, private, they ask me, what do I think? Because I'm confused. It's like, I'm bullish now, but I'm not bullish in 26. Well, that's it. I'm bullish now. I'm not bullish in 26. I think
Gotcha.
we're heading for significant all-time highs now. Again, this is what I see now. The only thing that worries me, like in the very near term for now, for June, is my forecasting model is predicting a high for June 22nd. If Bitcoin fell into June 22nd, that would be a low. My model is giving me a turning point, so that would be a low. But if Bitcoin begins to rise sharply into late June, it probably slows down in late June as well. But you know what? It showed me that it should pick back up as early as July 10th. So yeah, these are just short-term fluctuations. In fact, my model did pick up this May 23rd high. It picked it up to the day. But it was just a minor turning point. I said so on the monthly classes that I do. I said, yes, I think it turns down. No, I don't think it's significant. And if anything, it's a buying opportunity. I used it as a buying opportunity. And I actually thought we might have a few more days at 100K. The other thing, Max, is 100K. Just 100K. I think the market sees 100K as cheap now, as support. Oh, Bitcoin's back down to 100K. Whereas before, and I was guilty of this as well, I thought it felt expensive, even though it used large number bias, it did feel expensive. It's not by any measurement, by any objective measurement. Bitcoin should be at 300K at least. It's 50K. I think it's 1 trillion for every 50K. Yeah, it should be $6 trillion asset. I mean, gold is at 20 plus trillion. So Bitcoin should be at least 250, just by that metric alone, that comparison. But it felt expensive. I think the market felt it was expensive too. I think that's shifted. I think the market let me count it here because I have the chart here. 1, 2, 3, 4 times Bitcoin tested 100K support. I mean, just price rallied immediately. Last time was Trump v. Elon, which I don't like to see. It hurts to see.
Isn't it heartbreaking?
I don't think, yeah, it's heartbreaking. That's the last time it went to 100K. I was like, nah, no way Bitcoin goes below 100K because Trump is having a beef with Elon. So yeah, that's it. It looks good. Chart looks good. But then again, we have not had significant price discovery at new all-time highs, but I think it's coming.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think yeah, I agree with you about that 100K. That it takes people a while to have the psychological models changed. And
Yeah,
you articulated in the way that 100K used to feel expensive and now 100K feels cheap.
yeah.
And so that changes the dynamic significantly. If there's something maybe scaring you, if there's something negative, what are the negative things that we need to be concerned about?
I mean, right now, I have to say, negative. I would say the altcoins. Let's just forget Bitcoin for a second. I don't think the altcoins look healthy at all. Like even this small correction that Bitcoin experienced between 110 and 100, that's nothing. That's not even 10%. Solana still managed to fall like 20%. Previous market leader, I should add. I mean, we used to outperform. It was on 22%. Just measuring it here. ETH took a ETH actually looks pretty robust. Bunch of altcoins just took a beating. I was looking at it yesterday. I was going through the altcoins. I was like, wow, this looks horrible. I mean, some of them went down significantly. They even retested the April lows. Maybe I'm following the wrong altcoins. Maybe some are doing well. I'm pretty sure some of them are doing great. But by and large, the altcoin space feels dead. It's felt dead. The whole bull market continues to feel dead to me. Maybe there's some type of pickup in the next cycle, but for the 6 or so months that I think we have left in this bull market, I think, yeah, I don't think they're gonna pick back up. The other thing is I've seen a lot of people be a bit too hopeful that maybe this time the cycle will not repeat. I think I read this opinion as recently as Friday. Somebody said on like Forbes or whatever, and I don't remember who was Forbes. Somebody was saying in some publication, forget about the cycle. Institutions are here. It's just never-ending bull market from here until the end of times. Yeah, you know what? They were saying the same thing last time. And Bitcoin is a macro asset. It's very sensitive to global liquidity and things of this nature. I am worried about the bond market. I am worried that the Fed is not cutting rates. I don't think they will cut rates. I think you need to get rid of Powell before he had a chance of cutting rates. He does not want to be the guy who's going to cut rates into inflation. Um, I do think, and I was writing about this recently also, there is some inflation creeping into the US because of tariffs on China specifically, significant rise in prices from Chinese goods. The Fed doesn't cut. I can see things turning down next year. I also read recently that real estate is slowing down in the States. I
Big
think that's
time.
also liquidity and rate sensitive. Yeah, that's because of rates. Rates continue to stay high. They're too high. Interest rates right now are too high. And I think we were talking about this on a previous podcast, that China can take this whole government approach to fighting Trump on tariffs, but the US government can't. You have the Fed going in the opposite direction. I mean, Fed should really come to the table and lower rates, but I don't think they will. And the bond market is starting to crack. I'm starting to think that the reason that makes this 4-year cycle peak and creates the next recession and potential bear market, not just in crypto, but in macro assets in general, like stocks, it could be a bond market, some type of event in the bond market. I'm starting to worry that that's where things are going to start to show cracks. I think they're showing cracks already, and I don't think the Fed is going to do anything about it. Maybe because Powell, I don't want to get into Powell's head. I don't know what the guy's thinking, but maybe he's thinking, okay, he definitely, I am not going to go for another term. Trump is going to get rid of me. So if I hold on for just a few more months, just until January or February, I think that's when his term is due in February next year. Nobody can blame me for being the guy who didn't fight inflation. I fought inflation, raised rates, kept them high, higher for longer. I wrecked the economy, but who cares?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what worries me. Even though I recognize the boost in liquidity and this cyclical upturn that we have now, I can also just as easily see that for the same reasons, the market is going to peak in like November. Also, this new forecasting model that I have, which has been pretty good, man, it's showing me the whole month of November as a very high probability top. Whole month of November, like with a few exceptions. So it's rarely wrong on that level. If it's showing me a whole month as a high probability of a significant top, probably going to be a significant top. So yeah, we have a few more months left, I think, but then it turns down.
Okay. Very good. What about the whole, so often in these bull years, I'm just going off my memory, but it's so flat through summer, and the old sell in May and go away phrase is thrown around, and they say New York goes to the Hamptons and no one's trading and blah blah blah. Do you see the
No, tough
summer
times.
being boring, or is the summer going to be fun?
No, summer's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Why am I saying that? Liquidity, again, rising liquidity. Rising liquidity throughout, which is kind of unusual. Liquidity tends to be slow in Q2 because of tax season and whatever, tends to go down. And that's why you see the slowdown in Q3, because it works with a 3-month lag. So slowdown in Q2 and liquidity usually leads to a slowdown in the summer months, Q3. We're not seeing that. We're seeing just steady upturn in liquidity. Uh, could be that if the usual pattern is distorted by the fact that Trump's victory created, as usual, a lot of reshuffling of expectations, and I don't know, it was a bunch of things. So it did affect the usual liquidity patterns. But I will say this: the last 2 summers, selling May and go away, it worked. The market did slow down. Guess what? We knew ahead of time because of liquidity. There was a slowdown in liquidity in Q2, the usual slowdown. It begins around March, ends around June. That leads to a June through September slowdown. That's a usual pattern. Tops out
Yeah.
in March, picks back up in September, October. We're not seeing that this time around. And I'll leave you with this. Let the facts speak for themselves. The all-time high was made on May 22nd. May was a very strong month. It was the strongest month in the year, I think. Yeah, it's probably the strongest month in the year. This year was May. It's not following the usual pattern. I'll give you that. In fact, it actually confused me a little bit because my forecasting model did say the most significant low in the year will be made on April 7th, and these can flip. So these forecasts for highs can be lows. The forecast for lows can be highs. When I saw that, because I run the model in December, I ran on December 24. I saw that peak in April 7 as a low. And I thought, nah, that doesn't follow the usual seasonality. What's going to happen is it's going to have a very strong uptrend until April. Nope, bottomed in April. And the model then said, expect steady uptrend. In fact, it showed no turning points in May, except for the 23rd. That's exactly what happened. So I have to say it looks good. And I have to check my own biases because I'm bullish this asset class. I've been invested in it forever. I've made all my money in it. Believe in it fundamentally. So I always have a bias toward thinking it's gonna go up. So I have to keep myself in check. But I cannot find much to be worried about right now. Of course, price being price, if it dumps, if Bitcoin crashes to 90K next week, sure, I'll have to readjust. That would be unusual. We should not see, I'll say this, we should not see very, very deep corrections between now and August, at least. By deep, I mean 20% or higher, because that would mean the correlation between liquidity and Bitcoin is starting to break. We have not seen that. Every single significant correction we have seen has lined up with global liquidity. Well, guess what? It's straight up into the right global liquidity, meaning the most you should see on Bitcoin is about 10% drawdown. If you see more than that, okay, that's a reason to worry because the correlation is starting to break. So now you can't use liquidity to forecast future price action, and it's breaking the usual cyclical pattern. So okay, we're in uncharted territory, but it hasn't happened. So
In terms of, let's talk about news cycles or those kinds of things. The news, what would be the news that would come through that would really send Bitcoin going to the moon? Would it
Fed's cutting
be,
rates,
what's that?
cutting rates. The Fed is cutting rates.
Cutting
Yeah.
rates? What about passing of the big beautiful bill?
You tell me. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be. It could. I think it's going to be because I hear it's going to increase deficits, which is why Elon is so pissed. I think, and
So it's
the,
go for it.
the just saying that it seems like a big. I don't. It seems like a big boost in government spending, or at least deficit spending. That's good for Bitcoin. There's actually. I don't want to get too into the weeds on this either, but I saw a chart recently that shows. You know what you can use to predict liquidity itself? Government deficits. Basically, liquidity tracks the deficit. Higher, the more money the US government is spending, eventually the Fed begins to accommodate by printing money. So if the government runs large deficits, that's great for Bitcoin. It works with a very long lag, though. I think the lag on that is several months. So you could be the government spending a ton of money now into a recession. You're going to see a large expansion in liquidity next year, let's just say. So that would actually be bullish. More spending is great. It wouldn't translate into an immediate price boost. I think I cannot think of anything other than I think if the Fed begins to cut
What about trade deals?
trade deals too, absolutely.
Trade
Because
deals would do it.
yes, because it shows that Trump is willing to negotiate, and if Trump is willing to negotiate, people are going to speculate that China's next, and if there's a deal between China and the States, it's a yuan correlation again. The yuan strengthens further, China prints even more. I mean, these guys have to print, they're printing into a black hole. So whatever they print, the economy just absorbs it into a black hole of deflation. There's so much deflation in China right now that any amount that they print will not be enough. These guys need to print forever. They need to print that currency into oblivion, which they won't because they want to destroy the currency. But if the US is enabling a stronger yuan, or at least a yuan that is not crashing, they're going to keep printing and printing and printing. And guess what? The Chinese, when the government prints, they buy Bitcoin and they get out of the country. So yeah, that's super bullish too. Last time it took 4 years though. I looked at it, Max. It took 4 years for Trump and China to have a deal. So I'm not, I don't know, maybe it takes less time because there's going to be a deal at some point.
Yeah.
But news on that front would be good too. I also thought I noticed that the reason prices were falling on May 23rd is because Trump threatened the EU with 50% tariffs. I live in Europe. I mean, you're dealing with bureaucrats here. You're never going to get a deal, or at least something that makes sense out of the Europeans. Never. They're not reasonable, Max. The
Yeah.
Europeans are not reasonable. So maybe they actually Trump can apply enough pressure on the EU to come to for them to come to the table. I think the US can do that to Europe. So yeah, no, that you're right. That's a positive catalyst. But to be honest with you, I think it's going to be all about liquidity. It always
Okay.
is.
I want to
Yeah.
go back to two topics. I want to talk about the big beautiful bill a little bit. I'll share some of my thoughts on that, and I want to talk to you a little bit
Okay.
about Elon and Musk for the weekly value of it, the celebrity goss of it all. So
I want to write about it. So hey, go
on
ahead.
on the topic of the big beautiful bill, I think the headlines are really really misleading and really strange. In terms of government expenditure, the big
Mhm.
beautiful bill is going to reduce government expenditure by about $2 trillion. That's it's just not being reported. It's not being told that way. It's being told in a weird way, which it's very very hard to follow. But that's what's going to happen. So actually, the government spending is coming down a lot. Now, what's also happening is they are keeping the tax breaks and actually even improving them a little bit from 2017. So there was a temporary tax break that lasted from 2017 until now, so for 8 years, and it's set to go back up to really high. But those are they're going to be continued and even improved a little bit. What that means is that the average American taxpayer is going to get an extra $13,000 to $14,000 in their paychecks that they actually receive each year. So
But
the government,
is it extra? Sorry to interrupt. Is it because I'm trying to understand.
yes,
These are tax cuts that are already in place, and they're just the tax hike will not go into effect if the bill is passed, right?
correct, yeah, correct.
So it's
I
not
believe
technically a tax cut.
I believe those 13,000. Yeah. So again, it depends. So the reason that there's such confusing language around this
Hmm.
is the CBO who does the scoring and the predictions of what's going to happen as a result of this bill.
Hmm.
The way they talk is it's a tax cut from the highs that they would go to if it was brought in. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But
Yes.
that's not how you or I or anybody else would think about it. But that is how they score it and how they treat it. And that's why it gets really
Right.
really confusing.
Mm.
Yeah. So the language around it gets really really confusing and it's really really hard to follow. It's very very frustrating that it has to be this way. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's the way it is. So I believe the extra amount in people's pockets. I believe a portion of that is a sum that is missing from the upside, and a portion that is increased downside, increased
So
reduced taxes.
there is basically a reduced an effective tax cut if it goes. I
Correct.
think that part makes, based on my completely ignorant outsider's perspective, I think the tax cuts should stay in place and they should go down further. I don't know enough
Mhm.
taxes, and it stimulates the economy, so that makes sense. What I got confused with other items. I don't know how. My opinion is those are gonna go through. Like no matter what version of the bill makes passes the House or whatever, those tax cuts, if they're not made permanent, I did read from Besant. He tweeted about this, and he said not passing that is akin to the largest tax increase in recent history.
Yeah,
It's not
which
gonna happen.
means,
It's
which,
not gonna happen.
well, it's guaranteed financial destruction. What that
Yes.
means is no economic growth. It means they're going to have see, and the way the CBO scoring is this: the CBO does not take into account any changes in growth. So that's why, like, whenever every time an election comes around, the Democrats and the Republicans put out their things, and then the CBO scores it, right? And but they don't factor in the changes in growth. They just do the math on, well, if everything was exactly the same today, except the tax rate was higher, what would happen? So
Right.
that's why. So when if you were to run for president, right, and you came out and said, I'm going to tax everyone 100%, the CBO would come out and say, well, this guy's a genius. He's going to pay off the deficit in 2 years. But in actual fact, what would
Right.
happen is no one would work. Government income would shrink to zero, and you have to print trillions of dollars to get salvage. So the deficit would go up.
That's the
So
EU, Max. That
what's
is the
that?
EU. That's the EU right now.
That's the EU right now. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. So yeah, that kind of silliness makes this whole conversation so difficult and so cumbersome. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that there's all this money being left in the free market, which means that money will get, because free market allocates money more efficiently than government, of course. So what that means is you
Yes.
should see growth, but the CBO does not count any of that growth. Also, the CBO does not count any tariff income, a whole bunch of other things. So there's all these expectations that the debt is going to explode. And they also haven't taken into account any of the Doge cuts because that has to be in a separate bill for some technical reason in the Congress. So there's the whole bunch of things here that are happening that makes it very, very difficult to handle. But I think the biggest thing is the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty that creates the headaches. Once the big, beautiful bill, in whatever form that it eventually passes, takes place, I think the market's going to be very happy. Life's going to be good, and we're going to see you're going to see things start to take off a little bit. And if the country can get to a point where growth really picks up, and it's just going to take a few quarters, I would say, to kind of demonstrate to the world that it's okay. It's like, okay, growth's coming. You got this $10 trillion of investment from all around the world, right? You add all this stuff up, and you get a few quarters where the government is able to keep its head above water and even maybe pay off a little bit of debt. All of a sudden, then interest rates are going to plummet. Then that'll be the next catalyst. Will be even more growth on top of growth. It's going to be. It has the potential to be absolutely incredible and very, very amazing. Even though I understand, I'm a hardcore libertarian. I understand why Rand Paul and Elon Musk and whatever else aren't doing it, but I'm super excited about it because they want even more cuts. But all things done, it's an unbelievably good piece of news. Like if you look at it, what's the word? Pragmatically, it is the best, coolest budget that's ever been passed ever in the history of my lifetime. So
And
yeah,
when would it be passed? When do you
I
think
mean
it might be passed?
they're shooting for July 4th is their stated deadline. That's the Senate's goal. And I don't know if that
July
means pass.
4th.
Yeah.
All right, because I have my model is highlighting which the AI created an extreme turning point, an extreme reading on an index on this index. The last extreme reading was April 7th. The next one is actually July 7th. So maybe there's some anxiety around it later this month, and then it passes and boom. Could be. I'm not. Listen, I
So
like Trump's pro-growth agenda. I mean, he's one of the few politicians in the world that's actually going for growth. Everybody else is going for tax hikes and austerity, which doesn't work. And China's collapsing. Um, no, that actually could potentially provide a boost into the end of this bull market. As the cycles analyst, I will always say my base case is always going to be, unless I'm proven wrong, something bad happens in 26. 26 should be recession or bad. Then it picks back up in 27. But 26, that's the cycle. I will also say this. I mean, I have forecast, but I also have indicators that help me uh, it helps me know what the cycle is doing right now and present. So right now, looking bullish. If there is no bear market, I will know. I'll still be long on my positions. I'll still be long Bitcoin. Hopefully that happens. The reason I bring that up is I'm trying to figure out, and I can't this cycle. It's harder to see. It was easy when COVID was taking place during the pandemic. The Fed was printing so much money, but around July they started sucking money back into the Fed through the reverse repo facility. They actually increased the interest rate to 25 basis points. They started sucking money in. They were saying it's because there's no collateral in the system. And again, I don't want to get into the specifics on the mechanics of the plumbing of the financial system. I never bought that argument. I thought, no, I don't think so. They're sucking liquidity from the market. That means they're worried about inflation. And I remember being at a birthday with a few of my friends. They asked me, because everybody was into crypto in 21, they said, what do you think is gonna, I remember perfectly, we're just around this barbecue. And they asked me, what do I think is going to stall the bull market? And I said, unequivocally, they're gonna start raising rates soon. And when they do that, it's gonna turn down. That's exactly what happened. You know what? I can't see anything now. Other than I don't like what's happening in the treasury market with interest rates. All of those things you're saying, even Elon was tweeting recently. He was saying that he's starting to realize that the only way to pay off the debt is to grow. You have to grow your way out of it. There's no austerity package that's going to lower the deficit. I was explaining this to my wife the other day. I said, listen, the problem is the government works in such a way that a lot of people are hooked on government spending. If you lower that government spending, those people are unemployed. Now you have less tax receipts, stock market down, lower tax receipts, safety net kicks in, higher, you have to pay out more benefits. And the way modern government works, if you go into a recession, your deficits balloon. So, and if you cut spending, you go into a deficit. The only way to reduce the debt is to go for high nominal growth. That means inflation and growth, both. And I think Trump's agenda is in that direction. And Trump and Elon was saying, yeah, this is probably the only way to get rid of our debt is to grow our way out of it. So I think that's coming. I'm not bearish on the states at all, but I do think there's a cycle. And I do see that, yeah, again, the treasury market breaking, more uncertainty, and you're looking at a scare, let's just call it, into next year. There's also other long-term cycles that I don't pay a lot of attention to, but other cycle analysts look at these. They've been saying that the area between 26 and 28 is like high probability of a recession. Now I correlate that with my own cycle work, and I say between 26 and 28, the only recession that I see is 26. I don't see 27, 28 as a recession, as recessionary years or crypto bear market, simply because that's the upswing in the 4-year cycle, which I'm very familiar with. Not familiar with recession cycles. What I'm trying to say is I've seen other people point to likely contraction in global liquidity into next year. And also the world outside of states does not look good. Europe does not look good. China doesn't look good. Elsewhere doesn't matter. So the three blocks, it's just the US that's holding it together. But yeah, listen, I think if you're so bullish on this, I can see why we'll be bullish if the big beautiful bill passes, just for the tax cuts that become permanent. Just that alone could lift this market even higher. But even without that, I think it's going higher. But it's interesting that you're saying early July, because okay, I mean that kind of lines up with my expectations for what's going to happen, the next month or so. I think it's going to be looks like it's going to be a high, but then there might be something big, and then in early July it picks back up. Famous last words. I don't know if any of that is going to happen, but it is what my model is saying, and it is what it's saying. So lines
And
up.
I believe the goal of July 4th is the Senate goal. But if the Senate makes any changes, then it goes
Mhm.
back to the House and they have to approve the changes.
No.
So that
Okay.
the extra handful of days you talked about could be that, because I think what they have said, typically the Congress has like 2 months off for summer or something.
Yeah.
But I think they've said they're not adjourning until this bill passes. So they will stay. All of the Congress people are used to a 2 month vacation over summer. None of them are allowed to go home. They'll have sessions every day until they pass this thing. So
Okay.
they're gonna be pretty motivated to pass it
All right.
come July 4th.
Interesting. I'm very curious about the dates you mentioned. Okay, yeah, because I mean, ahead of a big bill passing, there might be some, someone standing out or like some standoff because somebody wants something, and it looks like it's not going to pass, and then it pass. I think I've seen that before,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of a scare ahead of the actual thing, and then the thing
Well, it
happens, and
happens.
boom.
It happens every debt ceiling crisis, right? It's like,
Yes, that's what
yeah,
I was thinking. Yes,
yeah,
every debt ceiling crisis.
yeah. So yeah. So anyways, it's there's a lot going on. It's fun to watch. It's interesting. Let's talk to the let's put our what I don't know, fashion magazine hat on. Let's talk about the drama with Elon and Trump.
Ah, man, I don't even know what's happening. I honestly don't know what's happening, like why it's happening. The only thing that makes sense to me is that Elon is concerned, and I'm super curious to hear your opinion, but the only thing I think kind of maybe makes sense is I've seen some people throw out the idea that Trump wants to spend more at the government level, and it's upsetting. I know you're probably going to disagree with this. I'm not saying I agree with this. This is what I heard. And that Elon is upset at the fact that Trump is basically undermining all the work that he's done at Doge, and that he really believes that deficit and getting rid of that is an existential crisis, which it probably is. Actually, why do I say probably? It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard to deal with it. I have always been of the opinion, even though I love Doge and what they're doing, and I applaud the effort, but I've always been of the opinion that that's not how you get rid of the debt or the deficit. You have to grow your way out of it.
Mhm.
That's why I was actually on board with Liz Truss's budget back in 22. I thought it was pretty bold. She
Yeah.
wanted to cut taxes and spend more money. And I said, yeah, that's what it's going to destroy the pound, but it will bring a lot of growth into the UK. The UK probably grows its way out through very aggressive pro growth policies like that. And it seems that Trump is going for that. So I don't see I don't have a problem with it. But then you know what the problem is I did see Elon tweet about the fact that he understands this too. So if he knows that you have to cut tax, because I mean the bill cuts taxes, which yeah, that increases government spending, but it increases the deficit. But so what? Cutting taxes also stimulates growth. He knows that. So I honestly can't make sense. I don't know why they're fighting. Why are
I
they
see.
fighting that?
I don't begrudge a lot of smart people that I like Rand Paul and others, are like, no, they're like the budget allows government to be too big. And I must confess, even myself, I'm like, I think there's a lot of things that the Big Beautiful Bill is going to do to encourage growth. And I almost don't want it to happen until government gets slaughtered. Because if the economy takes off and people's quality of life start improving, the appetite for doing the difficult thing of cutting government will disappear. We don't
Yeah,
need to cut. We don't need to cut. It's too the people
that's true.
who are getting all the freebies. They will fight tooth and nail forever. The only time the opposition fights tooth and nail in equal or opposite force is when they are being drained so dry and they were going hungry and they are starving and they see the writings on the wall and they're suffering that they fight just as hard to get those bastards to stop stealing from them. And
Right.
if the economy takes off, that appetite to fight back doesn't go, it disappears. And then now we've got a massively growing economy, great, and there's this massive cesspool of theft, stealing trillions of dollars out of that growth and funding themselves and taking over more organizations, buying more media outlets, making sure their people get voted into certain heads of three-letter agencies, and the problem gets worse. So there's a big part of me that's like, I don't want the economy to get good or better until this government bullshit is fucking slaughtered. However,
This is how you would do it. Go on.
yeah. Okay, that's so I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with Elon's position, even though I am a big fan of the Big Beautiful Bill. I think someone summed it up perfectly with he said Elon's position is ideological and Trump's
Yeah.
position is pragmatic.
Yes.
And I think
100%.
that's 1,000% true and a very good articulation of the problem. And I don't begrudge the feud the way it is. I'm going to jump away for a second, by the way, because you mentioned something else that becomes important. The only way out of the problem is to grow your way out of it. And very
Yeah.
few people understand that. I just want to take a moment to articulate to our listeners why that is. It is why inflation and government spending and just the big budget deficits is so insidious. Once it comes, you cannot do it back. If prices go up double, the next politician says, I'm going to get prices down. You can't do it. It will destroy the economy. And here's why. What happens is, let's say you run a store, you run a lumber yard, for example, right? But the
Mm.
way you work is you have a rolling credit with your bank. Say, I'm going to go and buy $100,000 worth of lumber, right? Can you give me the 80? I'll put down 20,000. You put down 80,000 bank. I'll go and buy the lumber. I'll turn it over the next 90 days. I'll pay you back. And this rolling credit is how pretty much the entire economy works for every business, every warehouse, everything in the whole economy. Well, if that price of lumber, the security that underwrites the loan that the bank gave you, if the prices come back down, now all of the banks are underwater. See how that works? Because now every warehouse full of equipment, all the farm equipment, all of the farmers borrow money to plant the seed, to do the fertilizer, to pay the hands, to buy the tractors, and they get paid one day later. If the day they get paid, the value of the crop is half, banks left and right, the entire economy absolutely collapses. Government's got to come in and spend trillions of dollars bailing out. Everything's broken. It's an absolute disaster. You either go into a Great Depression or you go into the other side of it, which is just governments have to take over everything. This is why government spending is so insidious, so brutal, and so cruel. It literally just destroys the economy, from which it's very, very hard to get out of. The only way to get out of it is, as you say, growth. So that's just like a really, really important thing for everyone to understand. Although politicians will get elected on getting prices lower and all this kind of bullshit, you actually can't do it in a meaningful way because everything else breaks.
Mhm.
Okay, now let's go back to Elon and Trump. I don't begrudge Elon having the opinion on the big beautiful bill that he has. But what he has, what the way he handled it was the most childish and pathetic thing I have ever seen in my life. He was
Keep it
throwing
in
a
private,
tantrum.
right?
He was throwing a tantrum like a 6-year-old girl. I was like, Trump's alive. He's like, oh yeah, he wanted the EV mandates, and Elon's like texting, oh yeah, you're a pedophile. It's the dumbest childish shit I have ever seen. And now a few other things have come out. First of all, I know how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, let alone the world's best. I
Hmm.
find it very, very hard that you could be one of the world's best entrepreneurs and one of the richest people in the world by being that emotional and weak and pathetic. I don't believe it. I have too high an opinion of entrepreneurs, and I believe it's too hard to get rich that you could be that pathetic. So I don't think so. The question that consumes my mind is I don't think Elon has been this way all his life. Something weird has happened, and I am sitting here in the background hoping, praying because I love the guy. I love what he did with Doge, what he's done with Tesla, with SpaceX. The guy's amazing. I love Elon. I love him. He was a little bit slow to the party. He only came on the MAGA movement like 6 months ago, but he learned his lesson. He lost his first son to DEI shit. So I
Hmm.
think I think he kind of came out of it, and I love him. But this reaction was so weird and so bad. I'm just like heartbroken at the whole thing. What I'm hoping for is that actually he's on some kind of medication, or maybe he's gotten hooked on drugs or something. Maybe he's taking hormone therapy. I don't know. But I am hoping something is going on with him medically that is can be fixed. And we get our Elon back. He's too good a person. I want him back. This was just pathetic and a joke on every level, and I was just so disappointed in it. I want him to have an excuse so I can get back to liking him as much as I used to.
I mean, I was shocked to find that Trump was actually the one, the grown up in that and that
When
feud.
does
And
that?
I mean, I when does that ever happen?
Never. It
Trump was
never happens.
very gracious, very polite, and it's like
Very
Trump's
measured.
being the, he's taking the high road, but Elon's
Uh-huh.
like, you're a pedophile. It's like, yeah, no, I agree. Elon is a weird. I'll say this: I love Elon, but I think he's super eccentric. So he's
Yeah.
just being eccentric like he usually is. He waged war. I think the reason he joined MAGA is because the DEI shit, daughter, son, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but that's why. So he
Yeah.
basically he took it upon himself to right the wrongs in the world because something happened to him that's deep and personal, which I understand. But he just said, okay, I'm gonna change the whole fucking planet because something bad happened to me. It's like, dude, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Um,
Join the
so
movement.
yeah, join the movement. So I thought it was maybe I think he got a bit high on himself,
I,
to be honest. He thought
that's
he
possible.
could go. I also he said no way Trump would have won without me. I don't
What did he
believe
say,
that's
sir?
true.
What was
He
that?
tweeted that there's no way Trump would have won the election without him. Don't think that's true at all. Trump would have won. I think he would have won. Maybe he would have been so decisive. Sure,
Mm.
sure. He must have turned some people. He turned Rogan.
Yeah.
And with him, a lot of people turned too. But no, Trump had it.
To
He
to
always
be
had it.
to be fair, Elon was instrumental in turning Rogan, I believe.
He
Um,
was absolutely.
yeah.
He
So I
he,
mean,
he is
huge.
the recent Rogan turn.
I'll say this: I don't think Trump would have won if Elon didn't buy Twitter.
That's true.
So
That's true.
I don't. Yeah, like I'm happy to like yeah. It was, and this is the just breaks your heart. Like the world, just everyone's been fighting, and the whole world is so divisive. And it looked like a trend for the first time ever. Like for the first time, I think in my lifetime, more than 50% of Americans agree in the direction of the country. Hasn't happened in my lifetime, right?
Oh, really?
And it's just starting to turn, and then like two of the biggest advocates start warring. It's freaking heartbreaking.
But
But
why?
anyway.
But why? Do you know what? Nobody knows why. Nobody seems to know why. It can't be the cuts and Doge and whatever. That can't be the reason. Like, why? What
I
happened?
think I think there could be a little bit of the power trip for sure. Like so that you
The
heard about
twin
that
presidents,
you heard yeah,
Yeah.
you heard about the NASA thing? The,
No.
the NASA
What?
nominee? So and I remember as recently as like a month ago, Trump was like praising Elon. He goes, "This guy's incredible. He's sacrificed for his country, and he's here. And you
Oh
know
yeah.
what? He's never asked me for a single thing, not one time. He's never asked me for anything." Like a month ago, Trump said that. Well, it turns out he did end up asking him for something.
Of
He
course.
asked for a specific person to be put in head of at the head of NASA, right? And to begin with, like, who knows more about space and rockets than Elon? Like, you would want him to be your number one advisor. So it makes perfect sense. And I'm sure Trump was like, yeah, like, of course, tell me who you want. Like, let's hear it. He turns out he chose Elon chose a diehard Democrat, and Trump was just like, listen, I don't know exactly what Trump. I'm guessing. I'm guessing what Trump said was, I don't like this guy.